This is Chilling. From the outside, it's sculpture with strong lines and shapes brought to life by the changing light and shadow of the high-filled sun. If you think that decor looks like a work of art, wait until you see what's cooking.
In the service industry, it's all about growth and improvement, yeah? It's about taking the chefs into school and teaching them exactly what flavors to mix together to come up with a perfect combo. And I think we've done that really well with our breakfast buffet and our lunch buffet as well.
Excellent. Yeah, your breakfast is excellent, but even the lunch, man, it's to die for.
Yeah.
Man, somebody can feast their face out. But I mean, the prices and the affordability of this food is really so fascinating. And you talk about a hotel being nestled in the city itself. Like, how much can a plate of food, like for example, for a walk-in customer, pay for if they want to eat a very nice lunch?
So for our breakfast buffet, we have two options. You can pay either 30,000 for just fruits for the people that are trying to be healthy, and then 50,000 for the full breakfast, which has fruits, it has juice, it has pastries, it has hot foods, you know, eggs, sausages, mushrooms, all this healthy stuff, and of course also the junk, you know, chicken lollipops. So we have everything covered in one package, So 30,000 and 50,000, you get yourself a proper breakfast in the city center, and we look forward to having as many people as possible.
Today we are going to be listening to a story of survival amidst extreme odds and how this gentleman led a professional career of dealing with insect science, a job that took him places, you can say over 10 countries, and dealing with this very insect that has been destructive for over years since the biblical ages.
Locusts have been feared and reveled throughout history. Related to grasshoppers, these insects form enormous swarms that spread across regions, devouring crops and leaving serious agricultural damage in their wake. Plagues of locusts have devastated societies since the pharaohs led ancient Egypt, and they still wreak havoc today.
Survival of the Fittest is a fantastic read for anybody seeking or aspiring to give back to their society through their intellectual or academic integrity, or you can call it that. This book is everything you can ever imagine. Stories of survival, he says. And right now I'm delighted to sit down with an author who also happens to be a very big gentleman. He hails from the southwestern part of Uganda, a very small place called Kisoro, if I'm right.
Correct.
Correct. I don't know where I'm getting all this fascination of sitting down with such great people who are even on their 7th floor. Like about some time ago, I sat down with a professor of chemistry, and this one is not a professor of chemistry, but is a professor of a different science. Call it science of the insects. And he spent most of his time studying what we call the rare red locust. Ladies and gentlemen, what an honor to sit down with the incredible Dr. Bahana John, PhD. I had to put that there.
You did, you got it right.
How are you doing?
Fine, thank
First
you.
of all, let us address what we have behind here. Tell me about this canvas. Everyone seems to have put their signature here apart from mine. What happened?
I don't know. You must be hiding behind this locust.
Tell me about this situation.
This was during the launch of this particular book. and the ceremony was presided over by its Right Honorable former Prime Minister, Dr.Bahana Rugunda. And it was very well attended by more than 150 people, amongst whom was Dr. Ham Murira, the previously Minister of ICT and now Presidential Advisor, Senior Presidential Advisor. And there were a lot of other people prominent in society, and they were there to hear from the mouth of the author. And there I was.
Doctor, is it safe to say that you're half Zambian and half Ugandan? I mean, for all the time you spent in that country, you must have created a life. Tell me about your stay in Zambia.
Oh, Zambia is a fantastic country.
Yeah.
At that time, the President of the Republic of Zambia was none other than Kenneth Kaunda.
Yeah.
And he ruled over
a great man.
A great man, you know, real Pan-Africanist, who led, you know, Africa to fight apartheid South Africa. And he was so friendly, he made Zambians so friendly that once you were there, you were as good as being at home. And so, as far as I was concerned, I was at home. All I didn't really strive for was a passport, because I was carrying a Ugandan passport and I didn't want to, you know, find myself, who are you? Why are you here? I wanted to be original Ugandan.
By that time, I know things were done differently by the time you spent there in Zambia, but how was the adaptation like? The people, the culture, the food?
You know, Zambia is a very interesting country, extremely friendly people, as I said, and I imagine they must have picked it up from Kenneth Kaunda, the president, for 27 years. They had Congolese, they had the Angolans, they had the Malawians,
mixed
they had
race.
you know, real mixed Africans, all staying in that country. And of course, South Africans. The whole of the liberation movement in Southern Africa were based in Lusaka. Ugandans themselves, you know, our first president was there in exile in Lusaka. And so they were very, very friendly people. It is an urbanized country, about 60%, which has actually used to be about 75% urban.
Oh, wow.
That is pretty high.
Yeah.
So because of urbanization, English was the language to use. And I'm afraid I do not speak much of the local language.
Yeah.
Much of it is Bemba, which is the first one. And then you've got Lozi and, you know, all sorts of other languages.
How long did you spend in Zambia exactly?
I was in Zambia for 18 years, from 1978 to about 2006.
That's a long time.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
And we had our children there.
Yeah.
Two of them were born in Nairobi, Kenya, and the last one was born in Zambia. And they did their schools in Zambia. Eventually, when they left schools in Zambia, they went to US for university education. But you know, education in Zambia was fantastic.
Much later on, we shall talk about how you came into being part of their tennis scene, you know, and how you enjoyed that expedition. But before that, I'm so fascinated, first of all, to understand, is it sort of like a crazy idea? Why would somebody ignore all the types of science and focus on what we call insect science, and in particular, tackle the most rarest insect to ever exist that appears like it can even take decades without appearing? Say, what was the logic behind that?
Very good question. My interest in locust research and management started when I was in Nairobi doing my PhD, degree of philosophy, as you appreciate. And at that time, I was working on, you know, maize paste, sorghum paste, and my other departments in the institution in which I was doing research were doing research work, I mean locust work. And I kept getting interested. Earlier on, when I was at Kaunda Research Station, which I'll be able to go through again, the Desert Locust Control Organization for Eastern Africa had a base at Kaunda. And one of my colleagues called Alfred Latigo got a job as a base manager. when he moved to Nairobi, and I also moved to Nairobi for my master's degree, I used to go and meet him. And I was intrigued what this organization was doing. And I came to learn so much about locust science that I said to myself, I would like to be a locust scientist. And that's how I picked the interest in locusts.
Interesting. And personally, you didn't have any interest in that insect right there?
Before that time, no, it was
You never knew, because it has existed before the biblical
years.
Yes. Yeah. You've heard about it.
I had heard about it.
And how disastrous it is.
It is very disastrous, very interesting, very historical. And of course, as you are aware, about 3 years ago, Uganda was invaded by locusts. But these locusts, there are about 3 different very destructive locust species. One is they called the desert locust, which is the biggest, and it normally breeds in semi-deserts or in deserts, interestingly.
Yeah.
And these deserts are in Africa, of course, the Sahara. We've got the Saudi Arabian desert. You've got, so the whole range of that continent of Africa and the Middle East, desert locust is able to breed there. Then we have got what we call the African migratory locust. That is not much in the news these days, but it also used to breed in Mali, West Africa. And then the red locust, for which I was working on for many years. And these 3 species invaded Uganda at various times in 1940s. So that's why you might be aware that Mwitanzige, or Lake Albert, basically was called Mwitanzige, because locusts would come flying over that massive water surface, and in their physiological imagination, they would see shadows and they would think they've landed on vegetation.
Yeah.
And so they would land only to discover, of course, that they are, So even Lake Edward was called Mwitanzige. Now, from my part of the district, Kigezi sub-region, children who were born about that time were either Sensije or, in other words, depicting the event of locusts. You might be aware, of course, that locusts were one of the 7 signs that God used in the Bible to force Pharaoh to get his people go. And the locust is that historical. It comes once in a long while. And in fact, in my book, I'm also saying that you don't need a lot of locust specialists. I'm the only one, and for the reason that locusts appear once in a very long time.
That's a bragging right. We shall dig much into the book later on. Let's call it episode 2. But I want to find out, for a small boy coming right from the shebangs of Kisoro, how was it like? How was your upbringing like? Give me that insight. I want just a snippet of how you were brought up to become this very brilliant, successful, incredibly smart gentleman we're having here right now.
I was born in a family of 7 children. I was the 3rd born.
Wow.
And interestingly, I was the first one to go to formal school.
Wow. Amongst your family members?
Yes.
Wow.
The eldest was a girl, the next one was a boy, and discrimination against the girls, so she never went to school. The boy was looking after my father's cows and sheep and goats. So I think my father thought, I don't want to get my investment in these animals, domestic animals. Then this young fellow got to school.
Were you the youngest?
At that time, no.
Why? Because
I was old enough to go to school.
Oh, good.
Right? Interestingly, Ibra, when I went to school, it was like, kindergarten. Basically, you are playing around with the sand and stone. And when we started learning how to read and write, we are writing in mud when it had rained, or we write in dust when, it has cleared. And we graduated to write between the lines on a banana leaf.
No. Say that again. You used to learn to write on mud?
You graduate from mud
to
dust and then on banana leaves.
Why? There were
Because
no
banana leaves are
writing materials?
no.
No pens, no books?
No. I never saw a pen until I was in primary 5.
Get out of
And
here.
this was ink pen. We used to have an ink pot and a pen with a nib that you dip in an ink pot, and then you are able to write.
Wow.
These big fountain, whatever you call them, they didn't exist. All right? So, church school was like kindergarten. From church school, I went to primary school. Now, this was 5 kilometers away, and I'm about 5 years old. Can you imagine?
5 kilometers
Yes,
for a 5-year-old.
for a 5-year-old. Very adventurous. And I did my 6 years, because those days you did primary school, and then you went to junior 1, and you went to junior 2 before you went to secondary school. So I did my primary 6 at the Sorora Primary School. I did very well, went to junior,
How many grades did you get? How did you pass?
first class,
You're kidding. You've always been that smart ever since childhood.
ever.
There's this scream with people from Kisoro. They're usually smart people.
Very smart. I think it is the tough background that we went through that really built us up to start using our brains. We are not born on beds of roses. We are born in very difficult times, very tough times. So I think the brains evolved to make us smart. And anywhere, in any secondary school in this country, you would find somebody from Kigezi in the top 5.
So we are going to take a break, and Chilling will be back shortly with another part. Now this is getting more juicy and more interesting, because Dr. Bahana has an interesting and fascinating story that you, my friend, who's watching us over there, would not want to miss. Survival of the Fittest is the book that we're going to address when we return. There's so much stories to tell. You could just imagine, why would a scientist write a book? And scientists boring in nature? That will surprise you, my friend, when we return. Don't move on it. This is still in the best of the good life. Come back and watch us.
UBC is the national public broadcaster. We educate, inform, entertain, and inspire our audiences. You can watch us on free-to-air channel 001, DSTV channel 282, GoTV channel 371, Star Times channel 201, Zuku TV channel 20, and Azam TV channel 350. Even when your subscription expires, you can still watch UBC for free on your pay TV platforms.
Hello, good evening, and welcome back to the best of the good life. Like you can notice, we have a cream de la cream on the show who likes to sell himself short. He's a PhD, Dr. Bahana, who recently just launched his book called Survival of the Fittest. Now, in case you haven't gotten yourself a copy, he will tell you and he will show you where to get yourself a copy. This is a manifesto, all a memo of fascinating stories that are going to blow your mind. So, Doctor, tell me, we were still conversing, and you used to write on mud, and then you later on elevated to writing on leaves?
On dust and then leaves.
Okay, so and then you graduated from primary with excellent grades, so you went to secondary where? And
Sesame Secondary School.
the same area, locality?
No, this is now 80 kilometers away from home.
You keep on going further.
Further and further. And you can imagine I was doing 8 kilometers to school and 8 kilometers back home.
Back and forth.
That's 16 kilometers.
No way.
When our children are born today, we drive them half a kilometer to go to school.
We don't even know that. We don't
So,
even value that.
Yeah, so that must have hardened me. And I'm even telling you a story in the book, how I was shoeless. I didn't have shoes.
Woo!
No
You remind me of a professor I had earlier on the show.
Right.
There was about this thing with you, people are not having shoes.
We didn't have shoes. Shoes must have been too expensive.
It was,
anyway.
yeah.
And because Kisoro is a very stony district, very stony, due to volcanic activity, everywhere you pass there are stones. And so you can imagine you knock your toes and you lose a toenail, and you don't realize that you've lost a toenail because it is very cold. It was always very cold until around 10, 11 when the sun is almost up.
Doctor, let us be honest. Let me ask you this, because it's now far gone. At that moment in time, be honest, didn't you ever wish to giving up on studying?
No. If anything, I was more determined.
What gave you that tenacity and that determination?
We had a number of people in civil service. One of them was a cousin of mine who eventually became an MP, the first MP from Kisoro. Another one was Kaihura's dad, called Karechezi, whom you must have read about. Another one was called Mpisi. Another one was called, never mind, the name escapes me. But these had the education much earlier, and they were in top jobs in civil service. There was even Frank Karimzo, who became head of civil service. And these are the people who gave us impetus, who wanted to be civil servants. To be a civil servant, you needed to choose which particular area you wanted. And I got inclined towards agriculture, largely because I was from a farming community. My mother made some little money to take me to school by selling produce, beans and potatoes and peas, right? And so you are eating whatever extra there is, may be sold in the market, but it wasn't much. And so the impetus to continue in school, to overcome all these difficulties, were largely due to, I want to be a top civil servant.
Okay.
And while eventually that didn't work the way I had planned, but at least I remained on the route. And I was, one of the few children that survived atrocities, what I call atrocities.
Yes.
Because you start with 5 of you in the nursery school, or church school as we were calling it, and then you end up maybe 50 in the primary school, and by the time you reach secondary school, you are less than 10. That rate of atrocity was extremely high. So a lot of children dropped out, but many of them dropped out as a result of lack of school fees.
Whatever he was talking about, guys, is just a whisper of what you can find in Survival of the Fittest. This is a book, Mzee, that you say can be a fantastic read for any youth out there. Why? Let me first straight to you this question before we cut into a break.
Yeah, I've given 9 reasons why autobiographies are written. We'll go through them next time. But largely, I felt I needed to share my story. My story has been very exciting. I've traveled to more than 30 countries, and most of them on business trips, government or international research trips. And so each of these trips gave me peculiar experience that nobody else may have had the opportunity to share. And I felt I needed to share that information, right? I've talked about crossing African borders. We were all looking black and we are all proud to be blacks, but to cross those borders which were created by colonialists is a big problem.
Hard, yes.
Very hard. And so then of course, traditionally, we used to sit around fireplace and our parents would be telling us stories, of where they came from, how they've been able to relate with each other, and that storytelling aspect of our culture is dead.
Mzee, let's first tell people how to get in touch with a copy in case one is interested to just go right now and purchase a copy. How do they get themselves a copy of this?
The books are available at Aristoc and Uganda Bookshop.
All right.
And very soon they will be on Amazon.
All right. Now do this. Take a timer or put a calendar or reminder on your calendar And check this out. Next week, we are returning with the same guest. Of course, we have so much to talk about. This has just been a whisper or just a gist, all right? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm here next week, the same time, on Chilling with Dr. Bahana John, PhD, who is an amazing person with an amazing story. So catch you then when we have him on the show once again.
Next week on Chilling.
City Center in Kampala, and we are going to Matuga. And right there at Maganjo, as you are sliding down, you are looking at Kawanda Research Station on your left-hand side. So I was about to arrive, and then suddenly we were hit by bullets.
Wow. They came in flying in.
The bullets just came flying in. And all I remember was I dived into a ditch because this was around April, May. And so there was a lot of heavy rain. And so I dived down into the ditch and water is flowing over me. And when there was subsiding of the bullets, I then walked out. And by the way, even little birds do not like the noise of gunfire.